Hi everyone, please subscribe my YouTube channel. My folks booted me out at 18, but years down the line they rang me up and declared, "We unloaded our place, so we're crashing with you." When I turned them down, my mom chuckled and replied, "Then we'll just roll up anyway." The following day, they showed up with their luggage and went stiff when they spotted who answered the door. I turned 18 when my folks showed me the door. No heads up, no easing in, just a straightforward, "You're grown now, handle your own affairs." I lacked a vehicle, any cash set aside, or a spot to crash. Higher education wasn't feasible since they earned too much for me to qualify for aid, but they certainly weren't pitching in. My dad hurled my stuff onto the yard, and my mom just grinned like this was some tough love moment I ought to appreciate. So I bounced between friends' couches, dozed in my ride once I had one, held down 2, occasionally 3 gigs. I clawed my way up the rough path, the one they boasted about taking, but unlike them, I had zero backup plan. I battled for years, but in the end, I succeeded. I landed a steady gig, a decent pad, and an existence I could take pride in. No credit to them. Then suddenly I received a phone call. My mother's tone was overly sugary. "Hey, dear, your dad and I just offloaded the house. We're settling in with you." I nearly burst out laughing. "No, you're not," I stated bluntly. She gave a tiny, patronizing giggle. "Oh, please, we'll arrive tomorrow. You've got loads of room." I ended the call. The next day I returned from work, and indeed there they were, parked on my front steps with their suitcases. But they weren't solo. When the door swung open, it wasn't me who met them. It was my attorney. Let's backtrack a bit. The time in between, I went no contact with my folks after they evicted me. Not from revenge, though I had plenty of reason, but because they showed I was merely a load on them. When I did attempt to keep lines open, my mom behaved like she was granting me a favor just by chatting. "Are you still scraping by? You really ought to figure out budgeting better," she'd remark, nursing her fancy latte in the home I was barred from entering. Meanwhile, I was skipping eats just to cover rent, so I quit reaching out, and they didn't appear to mind. It wasn't until I began thriving that they abruptly recalled my existence. It kicked off lightly, just casual little updates. My dad would fire off a message out of nowhere. "How's things? We think of you." Then my mom began phoning. "Just needed to catch your tone, sweetie. You know blood ties matter." "Yeah, right, of course." Then surfaced the true motive. They had unloaded their house. My dad had been laid off. They had splurged way past their limits for ages, piling up bills they brushed off because they assumed they'd have ample time to sort it. Except they ran out. Their backup strategy was basic. Me. Their appearance, so there they sat. On my steps, figuring they'd simply stroll into my space like I was obligated to them. When my attorney opened up, my mom's expression crumbled. My dad squinted. Who's this guy?" "My legal rep," I replied. My mom giggled like this was a prank. "Why on earth would you need a legal rep?" I folded my arms. "To ensure you grasp the penalties for illegal entry. Their complexions drained." I advanced. "You don't reside here. You are not invited here. And if you attempt to force entry, I will pursue charges." My mom's grin locked in place, but her eyes stopped smirking. "You wouldn't dare," she uttered, her tone shaking. "Test me." My dad jumped in, attempting the rational role. "Kid, let's discuss this indoors. We're kin." I shook my head. "No, kin doesn't dump their child on the curb and then appear years later demanding a handout." My mom's features contorted. "We brought you up. We provided you all." I released a sharp, resentful chuckle. "You discarded me like rubbish. You didn't mind if I went hungry, if I had shelter, if I survived or perished. You don't get to return now and pretend you merit anything from me." She parted her lips to debate, but my attorney interrupted. "I possess papers here indicating that you are barred from contacting or nearing my client anymore. If you do, lawsuits will follow." She faced me, panic slipping into her look. "You're seriously going through with this? To your own folks?" I locked eyes with her. "You went through with it to me first." And with that, I slammed the door on their expressions. Loose ends. A week went by, then 2. I figured I was clear. Then I received a note in the post. It was from my mother. "Since you declined to fulfill your role as our child, we have no option but to pursue court action. We will be challenging title to the property, as we feel we possess a claim to stay there. If you fail to cooperate, we will be compelled to intensify things." I sat gripping the note so tightly my knuckles blanched. Challenge title. Of my property, they were deranged. I phoned my attorney right away. He exhaled heavily, already anticipating this. "They lack a valid basis," he explained. "But that won't halt them from turning your world upside down," and he was spot on. The chaos kicks off. The initial move they made was disseminate falsehoods. They phoned relatives, acquaintances, even some of my colleagues. "He's ditched us," my mom wailed to my aunt. We're stuck in a rundown motel, burning through our final bucks. He won't even pick up our calls. How could he be so cold? Abruptly, I was the antagonist. Cousins I hadn't chatted with in ages fired off harsh texts. How could you handle your own folks this way? They brought you up and you toss them aside like waste. I wish you never have children because you don't merit a household. I disregarded them. Then my supervisor summoned me to his office. I received a strange message, he said, playing it aloud. It was my mother's tone. I just aimed to inform you what sort of individual you employ. My child is vicious. He abandoned his folks destitute after all we sacrificed for him. If he can desert his own blood, how can you rely on him? My supervisor shot me a glance. Not mad, just weary. I don't meddle in your private matters, but instruct your kin to exclude me. I tightened my jaw. I'll deal with it. But I had zero clue how severe it would become. Intensification. A few evenings later, my doorbell chimed. I peeked through the hole. My folks stood there, appearing cocky. Behind them, a cop. My gut sank. I opened up. The cop nodded courteously. Sir, these two assert they are the rightful owners of this dwelling and that you have illegally ousted them. I let out a quick, resentful chuckle. They're fabricating. My dad donned his finest injured look. We lack a residence. No funds. We just require shelter, officer. My mother dabbed at fake tears. He won't even permit us entry. Our own child. I addressed the cop. They evicted me at 18 and ignored me until they hit rock bottom. This is my dwelling, the cop exhaled. Do you have evidence of title? I nodded. Hold on. I fetched the deed from my drawer and passed it over. He scanned it, then faced my folks. This paper confirms he's the only owner. You lack a lawful claim to this spot. My mother gasped like she was the injured party. But where's folks? We have no place to turn. The cop massaged his brow. Ma'am, that's not how legislation operates. My father's expression soured. He glared at me like I was scum. You're truly going to allow us to endure? I held his stare. Like you allowed me to endure? Quiet. The cop cleared his throat. You pair need to vacate. If you return here, you'll be intruding. My mother's features warped with fury. You thankless brat. The cop lifted a hand. That's sufficient. Vacate. They had zero options. They departed, but I knew this wasn't finished, and I was correct. Snapping point. A week on, I arrived home to discover my front door ajar. My gut churned. I entered warily. The living area was demolished. Drawers yanked, pillows torn. My screen was smashed on the ground, and then I caught it rustling from the kitchen. I snatched the closest item, a metal fire tool, and sneaked ahead. My folks were in there, scavenging my fridge like they belonged. Fury exploded in me. What the heck are you doing? My mother whirled, clutching a box of scraps. We required eats. I gestured at the chaos. And this? My father folded his arms. We were reclaiming what's rightfully ours. I saw crimson. I drew my phone. You have 10 seconds to exit before I dial authorities. My mother's eyes bulged. You wouldn't. I pressed call. She let go of the box. My dad seized her arm. Let's split. But prior to exiting, my mother leaned close, tone hushed and poisonous. You'll be sorry for this. Then they vanished. I gazed at the destruction, pulse racing. And I realized this wasn't finished, not by a long shot. After they invaded my space, I submitted a report to authorities. The cops weren't overly optimistic. Since they're your kin, the system might not view it gravely, one uttered with an exhale. But forced entry remains an offense. We'll log it, not very reassuring. I swapped my locks, installed surveillance cams, took all safeguards imaginable. But inside, I knew my folks weren't finished. The follow-up invasion 2 weeks on, I received a notification on my device during work. I viewed the cam stream and my gut tightened. My folks were out front, once more. Only this round they weren't solo. They brought a lock tech. I could hardly comprehend the scene. My mother was chatting with the man, likely spinning a pity tale, while my dad stood arms crossed. I dialed authorities so quickly my fingers trembled. Then I cranked my phone sound and activated the intercom on the security setup. This is owned land. Depart now or face arrest. The tech startled. My mom dismissed him like no big deal. Oh, ignore him. This is our spot. He barred us out. The man paused. Then my dad barked, perform your task. We're compensating you, right? Before I could add more, the patrol vehicle arrived. The tech backed off, palms raised. I vow they claimed they owned it. The officers were approaching my folks. I observed as they got restrained right on my yard. My mom howled like she was being slain. This is absurd. Where's folks? We possess claims. The officer ignored, not when you break law, and just so they were carted away. I breathed out. Perhaps now they'd finally back off. The legal fight, I should have known otherwise. 2 days on, I received a note from an attorney. My folks were taking me to court. The allegation? Wrongful removal. They really attempted to claim that, as my folks, they had inherent claim to dwell in my space. It was madness. I brought the note directly to my own attorney, who almost chuckled. They lack grounds, he stated, but they're attempting to pull you into proceedings regardless, likely wishing you'll fold and agree. No way, we battled. They dredged up every act they ever performed for me in youth. We nurtured him. My mother yelled in session. We covered his meals, his attire, his education. He is indebted to us. Their attorney, likely ashamed to appear, attempted to frame it as a kin mix-up, but my attorney dismantled that instantly. The claimants evicted the respondent at 18 with zilch. No cash, no shelter, no aid. They have not added a dime toward his present dwelling. This is a baseless suit intended to squeeze monetary aid from a child they deserted. It was harsh, and ultimately the judge tossed the case, but my folks weren't finished. The major falsehood weeks elapsed. I figured perhaps, just perhaps, they had at last surrendered. Then my supervisor summoned me to his office. Once more, his expression blank. I received another contact regarding you. I tensed. My folks. He nodded, but this time they're not merely phoning me. My gut nodded. What do you mean? He passed me a dossier. Inside were personnel issues from staff I collaborated with. Several workers got unnamed alerts about you, claiming you're aggressive and harmful individual who was detained for home violence. I stared. What? My supervisor leaned in. I checked it personally, and clearly none holds truth. But somebody is striving intensely to have you terminated. My folks. It had to be. I tightened my jaw. Can I address these issues? He nodded. We'll probe, but I aim to alert you. Whoever's responsible. They aim to wreck you. My own folks were attempting to demolish my whole profession. And that's when it hit me. They didn't merely crave my space. They craved to strip everything from me. That's it. That evening I resolved. I wasn't merely going to resist. I was going to terminate this. Permanently. Ultimate clash. I was finished. For months, my folks had attempted to steamroll back into my world, not with affection or regret, but with scheming, court actions, and deceptions. They had invaded my dwelling, attempted to sabotage my job. And now they were tarnishing my reputation like I was some beast. I had passed my whole existence fearful of them. Even when they evicted me, a piece of me still craved their nod. But gazing at those made-up personnel issues, something in me broke. They weren't merely poor guardians. They were hazardous, and I was going to halt this once and for all. Preparing the scene, I knew precisely their location. Through some sleuthing, I learned they weren't truly destitute like they professed. They were holed up in a motel, barely managing, but still wasting their scant funds on their action against me. Sad, I could have dismissed them. Let them decay in their chaos, but no, I required them to confront me, so I texted them, we must converse. Rendezvous at the Vintage Eatery on 8th. 1 hour. Mom, so now you give a damn. Me, show up, or I file for the invasion. I knew they wouldn't skip the opportunity to scheme me face to face. And I was spot on. The confrontation, the eatery, was almost vacant when I got there. Just an elderly pair in the corner and a server too exhausted to notice. My folks were seated in a booth already. I approached and slipped into the opposite bench. They appeared rough. My mom's locks were messy, her gaze shifting like a waiting rescue. My dad, once so imposing and domineering, seemed diminished, drained by his own avarice. But I felt no sympathy, just anger. Okay, I uttered, tone icy. Let's wrap this, my mom sneered. Oh, so now you desire dialogue, after all you've inflicted on us. I chuckled, truly chuckled. What I've inflicted, you invaded my dwelling, you attempted to have me sacked, you took me to court. And somehow I'm the antagonist. She squinted. You deserted your kin. What else could we do? I leaned in. You were meant to be guardians. Quiet. My father fidgeted uneasily. He had always been the pragmatic type, but now he resembled a trapped man. You've proven your stance, he grumbled. We just require some aid. I exhaled sharply. No, you don't get to treat me as your pension scheme. You discarded me. You left me to battle while you lounged easily. Now that you're desperate, you slink back. My mother's features warped. That's not just. We tried our hardest. No, you didn't. I allowed the statements to land. You could have assisted me when I was battling. You could have phoned, inquired, anything. But you didn't because you were indifferent until you lacked alternatives. I shook my head. You don't cherish me. You just cherish what I can provide for you. My mom's gaze flared. You thankless little. The server passed and my mother halted, dropping her tone. But the poison remained. After all we gave up for you, do you grasp how much we expended nurturing you? The hours, the cash, the work. I tightened my jaw. That's what guardians are meant to do. My dad exhaled. Look, history is history. It's over. Can't we simply advance? I released a deliberate, controlled breath. You desire to advance. They both nodded eagerly. Then here's the plan, I said. First, you withdraw the action right away. I possess ample proof to counterfile, and if you continue this further, I will drag you to proceedings. My mom sneered, but my dad raised a palm. Okay. And second, I proceeded, you cease bothering my workplace. You halt disseminating deceptions about me. If I catch one more whisper, I'll ensure all learn precisely who you are. My father exhaled, massaging his brows. Is that everything? I leaned closer, tone hushed. No. Third, you remain out of my world eternally. My mother's jaw dropped. You don't intend that. I held her stare steady. I do. She began shaking her head. You can't simply sever us. We're your folks. I sensed something within me calm, some profound, persistent dread that had bound me to them even after everything. And then, at last, it vanished. I am not obligated to you anything, I stated plainly. Not any longer. My mother began to debate, but my father clutched her wrist. He realized I wasn't joking. And for the initial time in my existence, he appeared fearful of me. The fallout, they did withdraw the action, and the bothering ceased. I blocked them everywhere, dismissed their sad efforts to connect. For the initial time in ages, I felt liberated. Some relatives sided with them, labeled me cruel. I didn't mind. The ones who counted, my buddies, my selected kin, knew the facts, and that sufficed. Thought sometimes folks claim that kin is all, that regardless you should always support them. But kin isn't merely DNA. It's who appears when you require them. It's who handles you with affection, honor, and compassion. And if anyone demonstrates they don't merit space in your world, you aren't required to leave the entrance ajar. Because sometimes, the sole path to genuinely progress is to release them.